Welcome back to Learning Excel. In our previous presentations, we saw that this is an Excel workbook. This is an Excel worksheet. We are working on sheet 1. These are cells, these are columns, these are rows, and this is the data of marks obtained or marks received by these 5 students. I have added students' names and I have magnified the sheet to 150% so that you can see it well. You can see the data well. Now let me add that this is the name of the student, or even better, student name, and then here I enter marks. See, one thing is that Excel can copy what you have written before. It remembers that. There's a way to block it, but if you don't block it, Excel remembers what you have written previously and then copies it. If I click return, then marks received will be copied, and that can create problem sometime because it may enter data which you did not want to enter. You wanted to enter something else. So let's go back. I write marks and then move on. So now we have a worksheet which shows that marks received by students. I can add marks received by class 9 students. Okay. Now you see this thing is going way out here. So what I can do two things. First, I can't see the whole student name. So just like as I did previously, I can increase the size of the column by keeping the cursor here at the junction of two columns and then pressing the left mouse button and dragging it. So now it has increased. Let me fix it to the right size needed. Now here what I can do is, this is the heading of the table, so I can merge the two cells. How do I merge the two cells? I keep my mouse here and keep the left side of the mouse pressed and drag it. If I drag it into many more columns, all those will be merged into and become one cell, but right now I am only doing it in two. So I highlight this and then I click this button which merges these two cells. Since this is not showing very clearly, another thing I can do here is quickly go and decrease the font size, and it's approximately right now, so I can adjust a little more by making the columns little wider. So this is the table which shows that which student got how many marks. The thing we are going to discuss today is fascinating. It's very interesting. See, to draw a graph you need half an hour or 1 hour or at least 15 minutes, even if the data is only a few lines in length. With Excel you can draw graphs within a minute, less than a minute, even if the data is hundreds or thousands of lines, and you can present your data in a form which is very easy to understand by the observer. Let's get started. First, we will make graphs using data in a single column. So suppose this is the column we use, and then we click on graph, and it gives us an option that we can either have a graph in a column, and if we press here it will show the sample we can have different types of columns. We will go with the simplest one right now, and this is how it will appear. Now this type of data will be good in the columns because it is showing marks obtained by different people. There may be a data where you want to compare the same student, how many marks he got in the past, how many marks he got now, and then you use a graph called a line graph, and line graph looks like this. So these are different students, but if we had the data on the same student and we wanted to compare it, then the line graph will be better. There are many types of graphs, and we will go about those and discuss those in more advanced forms, but right now we will go with the column graph. We click next, and we are given an option. Either we can have the data in rows or columns. Then we are given the option to add title, axes, grid lines, legend, data labels, and data table, and I will talk about it in a minute. And we click next. Then it asks us, do you want to create the graph in a new sheet? Like there are sheets here, another sheet will be created and the graph will go here. It won't be seen on sheet 1. The second option is that you can create the graph as object in this sheet, sheet 1. If we had more sheets, you can create in any sheet you want. But right now we want to see the data and the graph together because I will see you some associations. So we will keep it in the sheet 1, and we can anytime change that whenever we want. So we click finish, and here is the graph. So simple. You can change the size of the graph simply by dragging it from the corner, and it was so simple. Even if there were 10,000 cells in the data, the graph would have been available equally quickly. Now there are many things. This is a very basic graph. It doesn't tell much. It can be proved in so many other ways, which I will show you now. So let's delete this graph and go a step further, and we highlight by the data that we want in the graph. We put our cursor here, click here, then keep the left side of the mouse pressed and drag to include all the data we want included. Then we click on graph. Again, it gives us an option whether we want a graph as a column which will appear like this, or we want a graph like line which will appear like this. If we were comparing something from the past, a line graph would have been better, but here we will go with a column graph, and there are many other types of graphs. We click next, and it tells us if we want the data in rows or columns. So the data in columns looks like this. Data in rows will look like this, where the names have gone on one side and the color of this corresponds with this color of the chart, but we will keep the data in columns where the names are written at the bottom of each column. Then we click next, and we are given 6 options. The first one is titles, axes, grid lines, legend, data labels, and data table. In title, the first option is chart title. We can enter the title of the chart. So we will write marks received by class 9 students. In category of x-axis, this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. It says, do you want to have a name? If you don't write anything, there won't be any name. But here, suppose we write students, and the y-axis is this one, and we write marks, right? And we click next, sorry, and so students appeared here, marks appeared here. Then we go to the next tab, which is axes. It's asking which is the primary axis, and we will leave this without touching it. The next, it is asking for grid lines. These black lines are grid lines. They help us read the graph. So we immediately know that John here got 5 marks. If there were no grid lines, it will be difficult to see he got 4 marks or 5 or 6. So these are called major grid lines. Then there are minor grid lines. If the data is very divided into very fine differences, just a difference of 0.2, 0.3 or something like that, and you want to read it accurately, then we use minor grid lines, but you can see it became very congested. Same way we can add major grid lines in the x-axis. These vertical lines appeared, and we can add minor grid lines also, but we don't want all this because the graph looks very congested. But depending on different situations, you may need it, so you should know how to add them. Here we will remove all the lines we don't need. Next, it gives us an option that this legend, that this is series 1, should be at the bottom. Then it goes there, corner, in the top, on the right side or the left side, and we will keep it on the right side for the time being. We can even remove it by clicking no, we don't want a legend. In some cases you need a legend, in others you don't. Then it says data labels. So if you add the series name, then that's not very useful here because it's all series 1. We did not label it. Then the category name is the name of each of these people who got how many marks, but we already see that is written at the bottom, so we don't need it. But to show you, we can add the name and value both. So Raj got 9 marks, so Raj 9 is here. We don't want that, and so we will remove all these. But just to know that we have this option available to write various parameters here on the data. Then the last thing it asks is that you can enter this data table at the bottom. If you click here, see this data table has come here. Again, we don't want it, so we will remove it. And then we go with the next step of the graph. Again, we will keep the graph in the same sheet because I want to show you an association. Now this is the graph. Sorry, I moved it by mistake, so I wanted to move this, and so let me bring it back. By dragging it, see, it can be easily dragged. Now we can change the size of this table by simply putting our cursor here and increasing or decreasing the height, the size of the table. Everything we can do from here. Now this is a very simple graph. Now you can see I will drag it, this title, to the center. I can further edit it by clicking like this to make it look better. Now to make the graph look even better, I click here in the anywhere in the graph, and I right click, and it asks me so many options. I want to format the chart area, or I want to change the chart type to say line type from bar type, or column type. I wants me to change the source of the data. This is the source of the data. So it gives so many options, and I don't want to do anything other than format the chart area. So it says that what do you want to change? You want to change the border of the chart. You want to make it like, say, if I say custom, it gives me options that I can have a say all these things at the border. Should the border have a shadow and round corner? So I click all just to show you. Then it asks me for fonts. I won't change it. Properties, I won't change it. And suddenly this outside has changed. Now also in the format chart area, it gives me an option to change the color of the area, and suppose I want to change it to this color, or say this color. So I click here, and suddenly the graph is appearing very different. If I wanted to change this color, I will again click anywhere in this chart, right click, click format chart area, go to something which is say lighter in color, because now my black words are seen clearly. Or I can go to another option like this one. Now, so I changed the chart area. Now let's look what I can change here in this area. I can click here, and suddenly you see this is all highlighted. I right click, this is called plot area. It says format plot area, and it gives me an option to change the again the border, which is gray. I can change it to say this color again, and I can fill the effect. Say I want very light color, and suddenly you see everything has changed. I can then click on these grid lines. When I click on these grid lines, see they have highlighted the grid lines. Previously I had clicked on the chart and these highlights were there. Then I clicked on the plot area, so the highlights were here, and then I click on grid lines, so all the grid lines are highlighted, and I click on right click, it says format grid lines. So I am giving the option that I can change the color from say black to say I go for white, right? And I can increase the weight, make them thicker or thinner. So now the grid lines look like this. Then it gives me option also, if I click in the one of these columns, to change the appearance of these columns. So you see the columns are highlighted by this square in the center of the column. I right click on any of the columns. It gives me option to format these columns from blue. Suppose I want them to be yellow, and here is the graph which has so many things that would have taken many hours to create. When I click here, I can format the chart title, so I can change again the color. If I put it here, so it's so easy to work in Excel to create graphs. Later on we will see we will create much more complicated graphs, but this was just to give you an idea as to how quick it is to use Excel to create beautiful graphs in no time.